Think about how we diagnose disease today. We rely on MRI machines, blood panels, and X-rays to see inside the human body. But thousands of years ago, healers mapped our anatomy and treated complex illnesses with none of these tools. Their accuracy was the result of a rigorously codified science that evolved over centuries of direct observation. We can track exactly how they built this knowledge through three surviving foundational texts: the Ayurveda, the Charaka Samhita, and the Bhava Prakasha. These documents define a complete ecosystem of care, detailing how human biology interacts with the universe, while setting strict ethical boundaries for anyone claiming the title of physician. Together, these ancient scriptures prove that early Indian medicine was, in fact, a highly structured, philosophical, and clinical science. The earliest roots of this system survive in the Ayurveda. Written in verse, it compiles ancient botanical knowledge alongside defensive magic, prescribing specific raw barks and seeds for physical ailments. Because its authors understood plant biology, they also recognized its lethal potential. Practitioners isolated toxins from certain flora to coat arrowheads, creating what were known as nagastras, or poisonous snake arrows, for use on the battlefield. This flowchart illustrates the organizational scale of the Ayurveda. It categorizes thousands of verses into distinct branches, including the Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishad sections, demonstrating an early drive to systematize vast amounts of information. By systematically observing and classifying the natural world, the Ayurveda supplied the biological raw materials that subsequent generations would refine into formal clinical logic. That refinement arrived with the Charaka Samhita. The text introduced the macrocosm-microcosm theory, the idea that the human body reflects the universe, built from the same elemental blocks of earth, wind, fire, and water. Under this framework, disease occurs when a specific element falls out of balance with its environment, requiring targeted intervention to restore equilibrium. To administer those interventions, the Charaka Samhita demanded absolute discipline. This Sanskrit manuscript outlines mandatory oaths for medical students. They were required to practice celibacy, speak truthfully, refuse to carry weapons, and prioritize a patient's welfare over personal wealth. Intellectual rigor was enforced just as strictly. To prove their competence, physicians had to survive the 8 topics for debate, a system of peer review where practitioners interrogated each other on diagnosis, textual interpretation, and clinical outcomes. The Charaka Samhita established that knowing the right herbs was entirely separate from being a responsible, reliable medical scientist. To make accurate diagnoses, these physicians developed a logical framework called yukti. It is the understanding that every outcome is the result of multiple, overlapping causative factors combining at the exact right moment. A healthy crop requires the precise combination of water, plowed soil, a viable seed, and climate. Yukti applies this same logic to human biology. Healing requires a 4-legged foundation: a doctor, a drug, a nurse, and a patient. If one fails, the equation collapses. As this diagnostic logic grew more complex, a later text called the Bhava Prakasha was compiled to organize it all into a usable daily reference manual. It divided medical knowledge into highly specific clinical departments. Practitioners could consult dedicated chapters on embryology, pediatrics, and the exact procedural rules for panchakarma, or deep cleansing therapies. The application of yukti, paired with the strict taxonomy of the Bhava Prakasha, stripped the mysticism out of healing, replacing it with a calculating, repeatable methodology. This structural diagram illustrates how these 3 texts stack together to form a comprehensive system. The Ayurveda provides the raw botany at the base. The Charaka Samhita establishes the diagnostic logic and ethics in the middle, and the Bhava Prakasha caps it with clinical organization. This progression traces a sequence of learning, beginning with the properties of the medicine itself, moving into the governing logic of the body and physician, and finally organizing those insights into specialized clinical departments. The tools have changed, but the philosophy remains intact. True healing requires an understanding of a patient's environment, a strict code of ethics, and a systematic approach to treatment. Long before the invention of modern imaging, the intellectual blueprint for deciphering the human body was already written down.